Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause to Grace Tsai. Okay, so let's focus on this girl in here. Thank you for being here, Grace.
Thank you for coming, all of you.
Yeah. So this is one of the crowdest events we have, like fully filling up this room, and it's great to have you all here. And I wonder the curiosity you guys have of what brought you to listen from Grace. I'm personally very curious to learn on how she makes decisions and how she became Grace, the person she represents for Southeast Asia today. So to start with, we're gonna try to get a bit into her mind, and I'm start by asking, like, Grace, how did it all start?
Well, it started in the year 1983. No, I'm joking. I just gave away my age, right? But well, first and foremost, I want to thank someone who drove all the way from Johor to be here. I don't know if you're in the room, but thanks for telling me on Facebook, and I hope you had a good journey. Also, thanks to all the media who's here. Yeah, I really appreciate your time. I think, so I was born in Ipoh. Ipoh girl. Anyone from Ipoh? Yay! And then left for Singapore when I was 16 on the ASEAN scholarship. And so I have been away from Malaysia for almost half my life now. I think, you know, there's never one pivotal moment that informs the next step of your life, but I would say it's a series of events, right? That if you're very sensitive to, would influence and change the path of your life. And like Steve Jobs would say, you will never know looking forward, but because we don't have the benefit of hindsight. But if we are truly reflective enough, you know, you can always see a pattern looking backwards, right? Mm-hmm. So I think my education years in Singapore definitely have showed me how a society should not be. You know, Singapore is great in many, many ways, but it is also stifling and restrictive in many, many ways, right?
So when were the years of education in Singapore? From when to when did you study in Singapore?
So I left after SPM here. I did A-levels in Singapore from year 2000 to 2006.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And before that, how was your childhood in Malaysia? And tell me a bit of your influencers or events that happened in your childhood that made you maybe become who you are now.
Yeah, so, okay, also my parents are in the room. It's the first time they are attending my, my talks. And my sister as well.
That's amazing. Welcome. Thank you for coming here.
Drove all the way from Ipoh. So I think we were raised in a very non-traditional family. I think I come up from a family of 5 siblings, so we're 6 kids. I always say I need therapy because so many siblings. Dilution of love and attention. No, I'm joking.
Are you the eldest, the youngest?
I'm the 5th and 6th. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And you know, we're a middle-income family. I think even when we were younger, we were, I would say, below middle-income family. I remember receiving my first clothes, like Grace's own skirt, only when I was 10. Right, so all my clothes and shoes before that were donated by the nuns, you know, or from my siblings. So we definitely lived in the relative scarcity. But I think my parents never made us feel like we were poor or never had enough. We were always living in abundance of warmth and love, and it's a crazy family. So one example would be my parents never asked me to study. So, you know, the grades were okay. I mean, it was okay, but it was never that kind of like, you know, you need to get good grades in school. But what they did was that, okay, we have a house and we have 6 rooms. So each kid would take a room and we have to transform it into a theme park. And the competition was that who can make the most revenue selling tickets to friends and neighbors. You know?
That's amazing.
I was like only maybe 8 or something at that time. Wow. And I would always take the bathroom. And because we have a window at the top and a huge bathroom, and I would close the door and open the tap for 2 days. Not very environmental friendly, by the way.
Yeah.
and and sekat every lubang, and then it becomes this swimming pool. And I remember always being able to charge a premium, like 50 cents a ticket for people to jump from the hole into this pool, right? And my second sister is also very entrepreneurial. She would normally be the bus, what do you call it? She would manage the transportation system in the house for some reason, and people would need to buy tickets from her to go from one room to the other.
Okay.
So
Should be the toll.
Yeah, she's the gatekeeper, right?
Oh my
Like,
God.
you can only enter with her permission, and she's still like that today, right? So I think, we were already told from a young age to define success differently. It was never the traditional way.
You were allowed to create.
Yes, we were allowed to create. We always had a tree in the garden that has the masak restaurant underneath. We would catch the longkang fish and fry and sell as if it was real fish. We would pluck the leaves from the tree and make nasi goreng and sell as if it was real, So I think I acquired this skill of selling something with nothing from a young age.
That's amazing. How does that impact your life now? As an ecosystem builder, as the hub in Singapore?
Yeah, so for those of you who are new to the concept of the hub and a co-working space and an entrepreneurial ecosystem, the hub in Singapore, I would say, has the largest community of entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs in the country. We run a physical co-working space that brings together now 500 hubbers. So amongst the community, we have 242 startups and organizations, and we connect them to investors, to corporates, to government, lots of media attention, and things like that. So 4 years ago, when I returned to Singapore to start this, there was no ecosystem. The things that Lais is doing today, these things were not existing 4 years ago. And I remember spending 3 months selecting the city to start the first hub in Asia. I was considering KL, the country I'm from. I was considering Jakarta because I was working there for 3 years as a professional. And I was considering Singapore because now I'm a permanent resident there. And the recipes or the elements in Singapore at that time, in 2011-12, were more ripe and correct. So I chose Singapore. And at that time, different communities did not know each other. People did not really understand entrepreneurship, nor the importance of community in doing that. So I had to sell a concept that was very, very new. I had to create a market when it did not exist. Yeah.
So that's clearly how your ability to sell nasi goreng.
From nasi goreng to ecosystem building, I guess.
That could be the headlines. Bro. Okay. Going back a little bit, you lived in Jakarta before, right? So what brought you to Jakarta, and what happened in that experience that was relevant to form you again as a person you are? Because it's funny how you find yourself as an ecosystem builder, because honestly, it's not like you have that option in school. Like, you want to be a dentist, a doctor, or an ecosystem builder. There's no university for that. So it's crazy how someone finds an unusual path and follows it. So tell me a bit about Jakarta and what happened in there.
Sure. So I left Singapore as fast as I could, right after university. And I chose a country that was fundamentally very different, from first world country to third world Indonesia, right? Why I did that, I have no idea. I just knew I had to get out of Singapore at that time. My first job was to be the assistant to Asia's marketing guru. We were co-authoring books together with Philip Kotler, the world's marketing guru, I guess. And it was a great learning experience. For me, I just wanted to learn and absorb as much as I can. I was only 22, 23 at that time. And my job was really to learn about successful companies and write about them, and also do consulting in marketing, right? So that was kind of the first platform. And then after that, my sister wanted to expand her telco infrastructure construction business.
The toll sister?
The entrepreneurial sister, yeah. So I helped her start the Indonesian outpost, the Indonesian expansion of a Malaysian company. And trust me, if you can do business in Indonesia, you can do business anywhere. And again, it was a steep learning curve. So I guess I tend to always choose a very, very steep learning curve that I want to master and learn. Although, it's from consulting to telco construction, right? And then it was only when I was 24, after working for 2 years there, that I had a quarter life crisis. Has anyone had that?
Yeah.
24, yeah?
Yeah.
Wow, very strong. Quarter life, not midlife like you, Michael.
Quarter life. Grace, I'll ask you just to move closer here so the light is not in your face.
Oh, okay, sure. So yeah, quarter life crisis, really started to question if my role in the world was to only make my sister richer, for example, or be in that industry in that sense. And I remember going through really low days for about 2 weeks. And I think the pivotal moment came when I literally had a dream in my sleep. And the dream was to build a building with 342 rooms for homeless children.
Wow.
To study, to live, and the whole map was in the dream. It was so freaky. There's the badminton court, the library, the music room, the classrooms, the dorms, and everything. And the worst thing of all was that it had a business model.
Oh my God.
Yeah, because I was a consultant, right? I was, clearly in the private sector, and the business model was such that the kids in the school will need to fend for themselves. They have to create revenue in order to stay in that school. So I woke up from that dream and started feeling, the first feeling was, I feel very unqualified to bring education to homeless children, And I started doing research. I watched Oprah Winfrey more to get inspired. And then it suddenly hit really when I found out about a man called John Wood. He was Bill Gates' right-hand man in Microsoft. And he left Microsoft after 9 years to solve illiteracy in the third world country, And I read and studied and formed patterns of my own. And immediately, in 3 weeks, I literally just sent out an email to all my consulting contacts. It went to the Jakarta Stock Exchange building, ExxonMobil, Microsoft, Google. I said, I have this dream and I need 5 things from anyone who wants to help, right? Books, volunteers, money, and a place to pilot, right? And I didn't have enough money at 24, so we prototyped. We started building libraries instead in very remote villages for children.
Wow.
And it was called Books for Hope. So by now it would have been 7 years old. And every weekend I would be in a village and living with villagers with no toilets. We were camping outdoors to build libraries for children. And it always had a business model in it. So we would charge big companies who wanted to do CSR in education, and we say that we are the solution provider for such projects. And they would pay us a good amount, and we would build these libraries. So when I left for my MBA 2 years later, we had already built about 20 libraries affecting about 25,000 children in villages in Indonesia. And my entire team is local, by the way. So I think that in Indonesia, I found my identity. And my identity was really to always create businesses that solve a real problem. It wasn't creating the next table reservation app. Sorry if there are any founders of
Actually,
booking.
there is.
Oh,
Benson
sorry.
Okay.
But I don't know. I think when you live in a city like Jakarta, when you smell poverty all around you, when you see 6-star hotels like the Ritz-Carlton, and then immediately next to it are people living in the drains, I think it's not human if you don't feel like you have to do something.
And question, I find it impressive how you looked for help and you found people to help you. And I find that common pattern very often in your life. How do you make sure, how do you do it to connect with people and with sometimes very high level people who some of us would see up there, and if you can give us some examples, but you connect to them and they help you. And that goes for your team, by the way, that goes for the amazing mentors you have. So how did you learn on how to make friends or how to connect with people?
I don't know, I have to ask my team. Pisa and Lisa and Michelle who are here. How do I make friends?
How did you learn it? Or how do you make friends?
You just have to be likable, I think. More than having to be smart or anything. You have to be very, very genuine. and you must have pure intentions, because it's the intention that draws people, I think. And then the rest of it is really skills that you can acquire. You know, the ability to sell a vision, your vision, to others, the ability to network, the ability to present yourself well, and things like that can be acquired. But I think the intention cannot be acquired. You know, it's either there or not. And there are, you know, I fundamentally believe that there are a lot of good people in the world, honestly. There's a lot of good money in the world. And if you have that right idea and the right timing, and you are the right person to do it, everything else follows, right? Everything else comes. I always get questions like, oh, if you pursue your passion, how do you make money? And you know, you always get that question as if the world has made it like, if you do something you love, you have to suffer. You know, or if you have to work for money, you cannot be doing something you love. And I think that mindset really has to change. There is no trade-off between doing something you love and getting paid for it. In fact, you cannot make money if you don't do something you love, right? And if you do something you love, you will be so freaking good at it. You will beat any kind of competition. You have so much perseverance, right? So I think those things come through when you ask people for help. And in the beginning, when it's just an idea, what do people invest in? It's just a person.
Yeah.
They really just believe in that person. And after that is the credibility, right? Do you start producing results and all that? Yeah.
So how did you learn, or when did you find out that you were something that, I don't know, how would you define yourself, an ecosystem builder?
It's just, it just happens to be what I do well at this point in life. Yeah.
Ecosystem builder. How did you find out that you were that person? How did you become Grace Sai in Singapore? What happened? How did you build your global network as well? I'm curious about repeating this connections thing on, like, how do you get to hang out with Annie Lennox? Or, I don't know.
Yeah. So when I hit that plateau in Indonesia, I'm like, okay, I've built Books for Hope, and I've done consulting and family business and all that. I hit the plateau, right? And then I wanted to study in the UK because my boyfriend at that time was in Europe, and I wanted to be at least in the same time zone.
Yeah.
And I remember telling a good friend and mentor who is a partner in BCG, in Boston Consulting Group, that I want to study Master of Science in Organizational Psychology in Manchester University, right? And then he kind of said, Grace, if you want to further your studies, do an MBA. And if you do an MBA, do it in the best schools. Don't even consider any mediocre school. So in the UK, it was only Oxford or Cambridge, right? And maybe London Business School. And you know, I started researching, and in Oxford, there is this, the MBA actually has a focus on social entrepreneurship, which is doing business that really solve world's problems. I'm like, wow. You know, it sounded like me. You know, it matched with my new identity, right? And I applied for this scholarship from the co-founder of eBay, Jeff Skoll. And there were 5 scholarships in a year for social entrepreneurs. And I was very lucky to be the first Southeast Asian, I would say, to get that scholarship. So I was a Skoll Scholar. In Oxford, was very lucky, I think, yeah. In Oxford, you know, Oxford really changed my life, as would any kind of exposure to an amazing ecosystem and an amazing education system, right? That's why I believe a lot in education. So in Oxford, you literally dine and wine with kings and queens and prime ministers and people who literally changed the world. With the Skoll connection, I was getting mentorship from people like Annie Lennox, although we try to sing a little bit at the corner. Sweet dreams are made of these. Okay. But she's also fighting a lot of, solving a lot of gender inequality issues, right? And female gender mutilation as well. And people like Desmond Tutu, who was Nelson Mandela's right-hand man in fighting against apartheid, and people like founder of TED, Chris Anderson. And just, I always feel like, you know, once you're in the midst of this kind of people, you have no choice but to want to be like them. You have no choice but to believe that individuals can really, really change the world and make an impact in the world, right? Who would have thought that South Africa can really, really be what it is today? You know, it took a lot of individuals and a lot of fight to be that. So I think when you stand, you know, when we stand on the shoulders of giants, you really get a glimpse of your own potential. And I think that informs what the hub is, right? For very early stage entrepreneurs, we surround them with kick-ass entrepreneurs, with mentors, with investors. Why? Is it really to get funded? Is it really to get, you know, this piece of advice or that? No. It's really to stand on their being able to see the future and being to see the glimpse of their own potential. And if it's the right kind of entrepreneur, that's all you need to do. And, you know, they become unstoppable after that.
It's basically about building belief, right? Generating belief by showing that a path is possible. It's also funny, and is why I'm asking you about your childhood before I give it back for you guys to ask her questions, is that people might ask her the obvious questions. And if you haven't seen it, recently there was this boom news on Tech in Asia about something that happened. There's no difference between Grace and us, between you and I, between Grace and Nelson Mandela, but the belief and the belief in that vision they had as well. And therefore, so what do you think that defines these great people? And when you're talking to them, how do you relate to them in a way that I believe most of us, if we would see these people, first thing we would say is we'll take a selfie, right? And post on Facebook. But how do you actually connect to them? How do you feel when you're talking to them and you just feel like you're almost like another like them? Where did you learn it from?
Yeah, it's strange. I really don't see a difference when I'm amongst these people. I just think they're a friend and another human being. And actually, if you get to know them or just be in their presence, you will see how truly humble the best people are. Why are they humble? Because they know how difficult it is, right, that journey. So I think since young, I have this lapse in respect for authority, right? So, you know, whether you are the king or this or that, to me, you're just another person. And I don't treat them differently. And sometimes these people find it a bit refreshing that, you know, that they're not being idolized. But I also fundamentally believe that all of us are like that inside, right? It's only whether we have unleashed that. So I think we have more in common with the rock stars and the role models than we think we have. And your first part of the question was?
No, it's really how did you get it from, this ability to connect with people genuinely as if you're one of them. And also, right now, how does it define this belief we are all in potential creators, entrepreneurs, world changers, change makers? How does that impact your mission now?
Yeah, I'm quite simple in a sense, right? I only see two groups of people in the world. Ready for that? Malaysians or non-Malaysians? No, I'm joking. No,
so I'm in the other group.
Yeah, okay. Or the others, right? No, I think the first group are people who adapt to reality. You know, they see the system, they think that the system works for them, will solve everything, and then they just be part of the system. The second group makes reality adapt to them. They want to change reality. And if you think that you belong to the second group, then you have to act on it. You have the responsibility to act on that. Because very, very few people have have really all the skills and that passion to really change reality, right? Whatever it is, right? Like just now I was just doing an interview with Karamjit of DNA, and it was like, what is the fundamental thing here? And I said that if you look at the most important events globally, change in movements and policies around women emancipation or LGBT rights or climate change initiatives, do you think it's driven from policymakers first? No, it's always driven by a small group of people first. This small group of people then spread their alternative form of reality to others, and then eventually it hits a tipping point and it becomes the new reality. So I think a lot of us assume that the current systems work, that someone else will solve problems for us. It's not true. If it is true, then the world will not be so screwed up as it is today. Many things don't work. whose responsibility is it, right? Is it the government's responsibility? No, because it's too slow and too bureaucratic. We all know that in Malaysia. Is it the private sector's job? Maybe they have the resources. If you combine the private sector as one, they are the largest economy in the world, right? But they also have very self-interested motivations and profit maximization drivers. So it's left with us. It's left with us. It's left with a bunch of good people who want to see a different world. So where do we go from there, right? First, we get together, unite in whatever way we can, in startup grinds, in co-working spaces, in communities, in passion groups, and then we acquire the skills to make the change we want. So I think that's the fundamental mission.
That's amazing. So that's how your mission, when you arrived in Singapore, now driving towards the end of my questions, and I want you guys to start thinking of what you want to ask Grace, is, okay, the mission is amazing and it's clear. And how did it happen 3 years ago that you decided to go to Singapore, back to Singapore, to start this co-working space? How was it then? How is it now? And what were the biggest challenges you had and moments where there was nothing but belief that this could happen?
So difficult, man. What questions? Okay, so 4 years ago when I went back to Singapore, the first thing I did was to test if I could get a job. Right, I just needed to test. Then, of course, I got accepted and things like that, and then I didn't accept anything. I just needed to know that if my startup doesn't work, I have a fallback. You know, if all of you who want to be founders, right, the worst case scenario is it doesn't work and you get a job. It's not that bad. It's quite bad to get a job, but, you know, like, to live life not by your own terms. But that was the first thing I did. The second thing I did was to get a job that pays me well in 6 months so that I don't have to work for 1 year to start the hub. And then when that happened already, I had 400 coffee chats. I spoke to 400 people to really understand the need at that point in time. So in 2012, it wasn't funding that people need. It wasn't VCs and mentors that people need. It was courage that people needed at that time. It was a tribe. It was a community that people needed. So when we started the hub, immediately, right, we said that we're not selling real estate. We're selling courage. So if you need that, you join us, right? Because if we play on the real estate angle, we can lose to any multi-millionaire family out there that is, you know, playing on very good at real estate. And that has happened, by the way. So when we started, we were the 6th co-working space, and now they are 48. Wow. And the big families are coming in as well. So not only have we survived, should I say that now? It's already out.
Boleh.
So we had just announced 2 days ago that we had raised and closed a Series A round of funding at 1.5 million Singapore dollars. Yeah, very exciting, but
that makes you one of the first cases of co-working in this region to have that, correct?
Yeah. Again, it's an unproven model in Asia and for an investor to put 1.5 million of his money into this is, I hope, will again pioneer, a new sector of spaces like that, and because it's very important. So that's very exciting, and with that we will expand within Singapore first, and we will support more startups. We will actually now provide shared services for startups so that it's a one-stop shop. You know, once you go there, you will have lawyers and VC funds that will hear you out, legal, accounting, all the boring professional services as well. And we want to open our doors to more regional startups. So, you know, the first invite goes out to Malaysian founders, Malaysian companies, Malaysian startups. If you want to consider expanding into ASEAN, which you should at one point, and if you want to, you know, tap into the strengths of Singapore as an ecosystem, please know that you have a natural home and a natural community with us in Singapore.
And that's amazing. So, what now? Because you've built that community, that space, and in co-working spaces in general, we see mega spaces coming in. Just in Malaysia, we had about 3 co-working spaces that were strong last year. Now we're popping up with about 7 or 10. I was about to start one. and I decided to start instead a community of network of spaces because I noticed that they need more help of like growing a community which is liquid, growing a community which is beyond the space. So what is your belief in terms of like co-working spaces business? What's happening with this in general now? What's the next step?
I think we will see consolidation happening, and also the shading off of the smaller ones, because it is a very difficult business to run, because it is part real estate and part everything else. But very, very few people actually know how to do it right. People know that, okay, it's a notion of community building and that and this and that, right? But very few people are community builders. You can't fake that, you know, because it's so public and you have to be like that every day, right? Lais is one, for example, and you can't fake that. You know, you just want to be around her, right? And she connects people generously
I know.
things like that. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
So I see a consolidation of the industry. Definitely, the more news that get out that it can be a profitable business, and it is, the more of the rich real estate families will come. Yeah. And then maybe the government will also try to get you out of business because they can offer very, very cheap space, you know. Like in our case, the government that also has relationship with us, they started a new co-working space across the road. And the worst thing is, it's free. You know, it's not a level playing field. It was very, very unfair, right? My whole team nearly, you know, pulled their hair out. I'm like, chill. It's okay. We have the community, right? So true enough, I think even if it was free and across the road, only one person left because the investor asked him to go and save costs, right? No one else left. So how do you create that stickiness in your community where they need each other, such that no matter what kind of competitors enter, it will be harder to shake it off, right?
It's beyond the space.
It's much, much beyond the space. The space is the means to an end, not the end. Right? A lot of people try to use community to make real estate profitable. You know, we are using real estate to make the community profitable. Very, very different motivations and very, very different approaches as well. And you can feel that when you walk to a space that is a real estate play, you can feel it's very sterile. You don't feel welcomed, you know?
Like the hotel meeting room feel.
Sorry?
The hotel meeting room.
Like hotel meeting rooms, like Regis.
Yes. Okay. Okay, guys. I'm giving it to the crowd right now. So just for now, thank you very much for the very genuine and candid sharing, Grace. So round of applause for her. And now I become a mic runner. So any questions for Grace?
Here for one night only. Come on.
There's the 10 seconds rule.
Yes, the hub is open every day actually. Yeah, go from 9 to 5. You can really, really feel the vibe. There is happy hour sponsored by PayPal at 5 p.m. Don't just go for the drinks though. But there's also open houses where you can get a tour of the space. Get in touch with Fiza or Alyssa. They are part of the team. Yeah.
Awesome. Questions?
Hi, Grace, this is Alan. Quick one. What's your thought about the startup scene in Malaysia? What's going on right now with the Magic, with Cyberjaya, with MDEX, stuff like that? And what's your thought in that?
Yeah, Malaysia. You all know, right, that 80% of the exits in Southeast Asia are Malaysian companies. You know that, right? You don't. Yeah, it is. It's just that Malaysia as a country sucks in marketing itself. As a startup hub, you know, you let Singapore take all the glory. But the big exits are from here, whether it's iProperty or Job Street or the car one by Patrick Grove. And you know, like My Taxi is doing really, really well. You know,
but they appear in TechCrunch as freaking Singaporean.
You know why? You know why? Why?
Because they're incorporated there?
It's incorporated here, right? It's a 100% true blue Malaysian thing. But what ended up happening was that once it's shown signs of investability, Vertex, which is Temasik's venture capital arm, immediately went in and invested 10 million, right? at that time a post valuation of around 350 million, at 30 million, right? And now it is a billion. It's
Yes.
already a unicorn. My Taxi is already a unicorn. And what did Malaysia do about it? Apart from Magic, that is trying to really raise all the success stories of the entrepreneurs, nothing really happens, right? And then Singapore went to claim it as its own. So really, as a country, we really need to come together in really claiming that. Okay, on the government agency, there are 96 government agencies trying to promote entrepreneurship here, and I think that is the cause of failure, right? Because no one is really taking ownership, and it's too diluted. It's really. I think that can be solved or disrupted a little bit. Of course, I'm biased towards Magic, right? You know, I was involved with Magic and starting the social entrepreneurship division there, working with Cheryl. So I would say that Magic is a great addition to the ecosystem because it brings people together and it collaborates with people, but selectively, not just saying, oh, I want to partner everyone and then drop the ball, right? It is really very, very curated kind of thing. I think it can be improved. I think we need critical mass. We need all these amazing mentors and investors to bump into each other more in certain places, because that's how magic happens. No pun intended.
Okay. Awesome. More questions?
Hi, I'm sure you have traveled a lot. So, based on your experience, what are the other places that you think are like more conducive for this ecosystem that you're driving?
You know, each city or each village or each place has its own strengths. It attracts different people. If you want places that have a lot of money, that has a lot of VC money waiting to jump on startups, then there are not many actually. Silicon Valley is one for sure. Singapore is the other. The last
I was referring to Asia.
Asia.
Yeah.
So in terms of if you want a lot of money, a lot of VCs, it would be Singapore. I think the amount of money in the VC space is at 1.7 billion. And the closest second to that is only around 350 million, yeah? Which is in Philippines or Indonesia, one of it. So if you are looking for that, that's there. If you're looking for a low-cost base to start out, then you might want to explore Indonesia, the Philippines, or Vietnam. If you want to look for market size immediately, then you know which countries you should go to, right? Indonesia, and the Philippines and Thailand. If you want to look for critical mass with a lot of buzz and all that happening, there are a few of these spots as well. Bangkok is doing quite well. So is KL and Malaysia and Singapore. The rest are really starting, like in Hanoi, like in Ubud, even in Bali. They attract different kinds of people, right? The hippies, the yoga type, they work without shoes and singlets and monkeys coming. So it's very, very different. So you go where it attracts you.
Thank you. Questions?
Hi Grace, I'm Amy. I wanted to ask about sort of what are the changing challenges of, I guess, startups. As like we've gone from 4 years ago in KL where there's hardly anything, and now, as you said, 80% of exits have come from Malaysia. As like new entrepreneurs here, what are the challenges we face today, and what will be the challenges that we're looking to face in this increasingly crowded space?
As an entrepreneur?
As startups, entrepreneurs, yep.
So particularly in Malaysia, yeah?
Malaysia, ASEAN.
Yeah, I would say different, right? So in Malaysia, I mean, there are many things that are against you if you're an entrepreneur. I think just the mindset, the culture, but also the lack of infrastructure, governance, financing, and all that. You can start a company in Singapore in 3 minutes, right? So some things are needed to get fixed here. 4 years ago, I would say there will be less competition. There will be less competition to be notable, to be noticed. Right now, I think it's still fairly okay. Like if you are a great entrepreneur, you will know it because people will make you know it. You will start speaking at Startup Grind, right? Liars will grab you. It's still fairly quiet in that sense, so you get a lot of attention and interest, and that helps a lot, a lot. And with key players like 500 and Magic and all these people here, you get more support here as well. So the challenges would really be differentiating from competition now, knowing which is the right funding to accept. Sometimes government is not the best one. Sometimes the government is the best one. Sometimes grants, sometimes convertible notes, sometimes this. So in general, the understanding of the, who is funding who for what purpose is quite crucial, even though in the mask of a more buzzy ecosystem. Yeah.
Awesome. Questions? Just can stand up.
Hi, Grace. Okay, I have one question. What are the top 3 lies being as an entrepreneur?
Sorry?
Top 3 lies.
Don't understand.
Lies.
Oh, the top 3 myths
Lie.
around entrepreneurship.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Okay, first topmost lie about entrepreneurship is that it's okay. First one is really that it is like the best job or the best thing to do, right? It's like there is this sexiness around entrepreneurship, right? Entrepreneurship is not everything but sexy. It is damn difficult. It is literally you lose nights of sleep if some things don't go well, because you're actually paying salaries of many of people. And you're always feeling like, you're running out of money. That's all. That feeling of scarcity is very panicky, right? And you have to bear all that burden yourself, right? In a company, your bosses bear that, or the boards bear that, or the shareholders bear that. There are many layers to share that and diffuse that burden. In a startup, it's all on you and your co-founders, right? And sometimes you can't share that much with the team as well. So that burden of always making decisions, bearing all this is the first non-sexy thing. I think the second lie is that this notion of a heroic entrepreneur, of this charismatic visionary thing, it's again far from the truth. Every successful entrepreneur is backed by an even better team. And sometimes there is not enough limelight shared with the team, actually by choice. They just don't want to come into the limelight. But there is this whole support system that makes, it takes a whole village to raise a child, kind of thing. Nothing can be more true than in entrepreneurship. And I think the third one would be, everyone always says, there's not enough money, I can't find funding. It's not true either. There's a lot of money. There's a lot of money. If you have the right mix of things, right? And you can verbalize that well, the money will be chasing after you, right? And then your difficulty then would be, which one should I pick? And what kind of term sheets. So, yeah, I would say those top 3.
Thank you. Okay, we're running towards our 3 last questions just because we have 3 hands. 4. Okay, we're gonna go to that.
Hi Grace, I'm Joey. So this question is about how, a lot of startups need money, and we will ask VCs or angel investors, how are you going to make sure that they don't mingle with that project itself? Like, most of the time venture capitalists will have vested interests. How do you make sure they don't get their hands into what you think you're supposed to be doing?
Very good question. Well, first of all, apologies to the VCs in the room, but I wouldn't jump to that as a first source of funding. It is again a hype. It is again a sexy thing. I'm sorry. But always try to use that as almost the last resort of funding, right? The first source, the best kind of source is customers pre-revenue. Things like that, right? And then your own thing. But how do you separate control and power and things like that? Just don't give them a board seat. Right? Because at the end, the decisions the decisions are made by the board, right? The shareholders can only influence things, can only suggest things, right? At the end, it's the board. If they don't have a board seat, then give them an observer seat or something like that, right? So, but before you sign any paper with any VC, you please get a lot of advice and don't jump into these things, because you're literally going to bed with someone, right? And you don't want to go to bed with the wrong person, as in life, as in business, right? And no one night stuff. You know, you really need to date the VC for a long time before signing anything. So just be careful of the terms. As a founder, as an entrepreneur, you need to master that bloody term sheet. There is no excuse, okay? You cannot say I outsource that to a lawyer. You know, I get my CFO or finance strong friends to the term sheet is the Bible and the shareholders agreement, right? You need to master every term. You need to learn every legal jargon. And if there's anything that can go wrong, it's on that paper. So just really take your time and surround yourself with mentors when you come to that stage. Does that help? Okay.
Hi Grace, my name is Michael. I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm actually a small business owner thinking of jumping into, well, today's definition of entrepreneurship. But correct me if I'm wrong here, the myth or rather the perception I'm having to deal with is that when you start off with a new product, right? You got to live a very bootstrappy life, and you got to either try to scrape some money together from friends and family or from pre-seed funding and all that. And at this age, right, having built up a little bit of income and all that, do I have to let go of my lifestyle to the point where I live like a college student again? I mean, from all the stories that I hear from pre-seed and like Cradle's funding, the 151, you only get 1,005 per person as allowance, and you can't do that after a certain stage in life. So is my perception wrong, and what do you think about it? Thank you.
I actually don't understand the question. Why do you want to be poor when you don't have to be?
Because I've tasted entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole techpreneurship thing, and I love it. I'm excited.
Okay.
But finance is stopping me from jumping into that wagon.
So you don't have the financial resources immediately. So
Yeah.
are you saying that if you want to be a tech entrepreneur, you might have to bootstrap? Do you have kids?
No.
Are you married?
Soon.
Oh, so you must save up for engagement and wedding, right?
Exactly.
Okay, prioritize that first. I think ideally, you shouldn't sacrifice your lifestyle. It depends, right? If you are living like a millionaire now, then of course, as a startup without funding, you cannot live like a millionaire, right? It really depends. Do we have to adjust our lifestyles if we to make it happen when we don't have enough financial resources completely? In starting the hub, I moved houses 3 times, depending on how much cash there is left in the bank, right? So you do need to make those adjustments, but it depends on what's at stake. I really cannot give a blanket answer because I need to know what's at stake for you. If you sacrifice some things, but we can take it offline. Okay.
Hi, my name is Francis. Actually, I'm quite your story about you go to the Indonesia, build the library for the poor kids to have education is quite inspired. So my question is, what is a key factor to build a success to become a success social entrepreneurs? So basically, because I involved with all few of this kind of social building a community, but more focus on disabled people and to build a good community for disabled people to support each others, and also they are able to access to something like building the entrepreneurship for disabled people. Because in Malaysia, I think the awareness is not so much there. But so my background, I want to see how to build a success social entrepreneurship to group those disabled people together, and they also able to access to this kind of information. They can come out to become an entrepreneur themselves. Yeah.
applaud your passion there and your intention. I think just like any kind of entity, whether you're a charity, a non-profit with some revenues, a social business, a company with CSR, or a traditional for-profit, there are good ones and there are bad ones. Okay, not all charities are good. Some are weak, some are bad, some are blah blah blah. Not all for-profits are bad either. So in that spectrum, there's good, there's bad. In whatever entity you choose, you have to be strong and good, right? If you want to talk about financial sustainability, have a business model. You have to have business acumen, even if you're solving social problems. Okay, except for very, very few cases where the market failures are too difficult and you cannot make a market out of that, you know, so no one paying for your services or your products, then that's another story. You will need to supplement with grants or donations. But as much as possible, have it as a markedly relevant thing as possible. So have a product or a service to sell, have a revenue model. Such that you are not reliant on donations and grants. You have your own backbone, you have your own machine. And that requires a lot of business acumen. So if depends, if you're not a business person, then find a partner who is one. Yeah, don't try to also. I don't believe in fixing weaknesses. By the way, I believe in life is too short. We just have to play by our strengths, but you have to complement your weaknesses with other people's strengths, right? That's why you need a team always. So yeah, find people who can be very good at business, and then find a product market fit. The rules of entrepreneurship apply to social entrepreneurship even more, right? So it's even harder to make it work, but it is a worthy cause. So. I wish you good luck.
Hi Grace, I'm from the corporate world, but I've just co-founded a foundation. I'm one of the 2 trustees that's going to do healthcare delivery. And we're going to do this differently, like we are going out to India to find new technologies to bring here so that we can do good for much more people. Now my question is, being in the corporate world and used to making money, I'm responsible for making the foundation socially sustainable. It's okay that we're able to raise massive amounts of capital from donors because we're a foundation. But when we create projects, how much money can I make? Is there a threshold? No, you're not supposed to make this obscene kind of money. You're supposed, at the foundation level, I understand we can't make money. That's obvious. But what about the projects that we create?
So you're a foundation, right? It's a non-profit. So whatever money you make stays with the mission. It doesn't leak out to shareholders, right? So what's wrong with making money? Yeah. So, again, there's a whole mindset. Like, why can big companies make money? And why can't foundations who try to do good not make money? Especially when it doesn't go out as profits and as dividends, right? So again, like each project, each thing, you have to see the feasibility and the viability of it. And, making the mission cannot be sustainable without financial sustainability. So it's about changing mindset if that's what you talk about. And then if you're from the corporate world, you would know how to make it work from a... Ayo. Sure, to each his own.
Hello. Okay, we have kind of room for one last question if anyone has a burning one. Okay, again.
That was office hours. How would you define smart money, and what will be the pitfalls that you would like to avoid when considering smart money?
So smart money is traditionally defined as money plus, right? Money plus advice, money plus networks, money plus new markets, connections, all that kind of thing. So the pitfalls would be when you are in a point of desperation when you're raising money. Because when you're in that point, you lose bargaining power, right? So never raise money when you need money. You must always raise money before you need money. And you must always raise 3 times more than you think you need, right? So there are just very common laws like that in the startup space. So the biggest pitfall happens when you're desperate. Never do that. The second pitfall happens when when you don't understand those term sheets and you don't know what to ask for. And the third one is, you have to see what skills and assets you have in your existing team and what you need, and find money that can plug in the gap. So whether it's connections or a brand name, a branded investor, that can bring many other stuff. But that's a deeper conversation, again, case by case.
Awesome. Okay, guys. Due to time, we have to close this. But first of all, thank you very much, Grace.
Thank you.
And
Thanks,
before we close down, I would just like to ask Grace if she has any kind of final words or advice for you guys. Wrapping up.
I think we need to unite more as a country and take more ownership in making, in really getting the recognition that it needs on our own, not relying on the private or the public sector. So
awesome. Another round of applause for Grace Sai. Thank you. Woo!